there's a couple of things that I would say. One, hope is just around the corner. It really is. This is not one of those things that's just a placating type of statement. There are people that love you and care for you, even though you may not think of it at that particular moment, because all you're thinking about is how you're feeling, or the lack of feeling is, words like it would be better if. No, there's no would be better if. It's just reach out to somebody. In the States, there is 988, which is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. There are so many different things that are out there. There are reaching out to your friends, reaching out to those, that one individual that I call it, Brene Brown calls it, reach out to your marble jar friends, those that that hold your confidences, they've been there with you and they'll be there for you. Don't think about, well, they're busy, they're this or they're that. Screw that. My brother, I think I told you before we started, I called my brother so many different times during the time after, when I was separated and going through divorce. Hadn't been for him, I'm not sure what I would end up doing. But actually reaching out to somebody, and sometimes it's just saying, hey, listen, I don't need you to solve my problem. I just need you to sit with me. Empathy, compassion, and is going to be the things that are going to help get you through with the other person. Giving yourself grace and just saying, hey, listen, I've screwed up. I've made mistakes. But know that you are deep down, you are a good person. There is nothing that cannot be, there's nothing that you've done that can't be fixed. If it's legal, you're going to have to end up owning it. If there are things that are wrong, you're going to have to own it. If there are things that, you've done, said, or whatever, you're going to have to own it and make amends for it as much as you possibly can. I've done that. Whether or not that somebody forgives you or not, that's not the reason why why you're asking for forgiveness. It's for the other individual. Those are the things that are crucial. But understand that deep down that you are worthy of love, connection, and belonging are absolutely critical. So many times we don't think we're worthy, when in fact that you are. You hear statements like, you're enough. And people go, what does that mean? It means that irrespective of anything outside, you're enough. Outside validation has no bearing on your self-worth or your value of the love that you possess for yourself. It's everything that's possessed within inside you. Anything from the external, that's things that we see. Those things are just, they're vapor. When we end up taking a look at where we are deep within inside ourselves and just say, listen, I'm worthy to be around. I'm worthy of love and connection and belonging. And it's just looking in the mirror and knowing that your story is not complete, that you have more to be able to provide.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I have a guest joining me today, part of the Mission Hope book, but more as well. He also writes and does some amazing things to help men. A great story as well. Very happy to have Brad on the podcast today. Brad, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, David. I appreciate the opportunity.
We were just having a chat before we hit record, and I've got pages of notes just listening, Brad, to your story and who you are, and I'm excited to have you on the podcast. It's going to be really good.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
to the podcast.
That.
You're from Michigan?
I am from Michigan.
There you go.
Originally from California via Colorado. I kept making the wrong turn and ended up here
Nice.
over 20 years ago.
Nice. Well, that's great. We're almost neighbors. We're pretty close here up in Canada. So
yes, we are.
That's very good. Glad to have you here. You are part of the Mission Hope book, and I've had the opportunity and the privilege to talk to many of the authors in this book. A great group of people, all led by one amazing woman, Shar Murphy. I would love to hear how you connected with Shar and became part of this project. How did that all start?
What's funny is, I started following Shar initially, and I was just like, oh, man, this is an amazing lady. Loved her story. And, her being a storyteller, I think that was one of the things that just drew me. I love words. I love reading. I love audiobooks. And And I think from my perspective, it was just like, I wanted to be part of that. And it was, for lack of a better words, it was just, a conjunction of minds that ended up coming together. And she said the same thing when we connected. She goes, I've been meaning to connect with you. I said, well, I've been meaning to connect with you. And it just was just amazing. And she goes, I got this book thing coming up. Listening to your story, I'd like to include something in there with you. How would you feel about that? I said, I'd love that. That'd be a great opportunity. And we just had a lot of conversations. And I think I ended up spending, oh my goodness, probably about 3 to 5 days writing, and then a couple of days editing, and then just forwarded off my portion to her. That's just how fast that it ended up going.
Wow. So the overarching theme of the book is hope. I'd like to get your definition of hope and how it relates to your story. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Sure. I think everybody has their own definition of hope. Mine is the focus and faith of things yet unseen and not yet realized, but with the understanding that there's something more on the other side that can be restorative. And when you take a look at the restorative power of hope and how that ends up playing a role within healing, people don't know on what that ends up looking like, especially when they run out of hope. It's like being somebody that's sliding down a rope and they're coming from a plane. I mean, this is just my thought process. They're sliding from a plane and they're on this rope and they're sliding and they have no knot at the end of the rope in which to grab onto and hold on for that moment so they can be pulled back up by hope. So as I'm looking at that, that was an awful lot of my focus when I started writing my chapter for hope, is how is this going to impact somebody else? My writing style is always such that the individual is an observer and a witness, not necessarily where I'm lecturing. It's that they can step into that parable-like environment and sit beside the individual and really get an understanding, rather than being, it's confronting issues rather than the confronting the person. And I think that that's a distinction where people can really find hope, is just so they're sitting alongside somebody and realizing that, hey, I'm there too. And if this individual can get through this, maybe I can too.
So the opposite of hope, we would guess what people would say, is hopelessness. From your perspective, in talking to you before we record again, you shared some pretty powerful background to your story. And it seemed like there was a point where things were really dark and you were in a place that maybe hope wasn't in abundance. Can you kind of explain a little bit about that? Because I think that gives them some context to our conversation today.
Sure. And, there has been so many different situations in my lifetime that I saw things in a different way. Losing my dad in 1980 from cancer. He'd been my rock. He was 47 years old. And just from where he came from as an orphan and then going to the military and just how he ended up coming through those. But yet there was still trauma events that I had in my lifetime with my dad, and recognizing those things. But they compound. Losing my daughter to suicide in May of 2018 after 2 previous attempts. Some of them were pretty bad. And just always feeling that hopelessness, because here I am, her dad, and serving the military, for 15 years, but yet I couldn't save my own daughter. That plays on you, and that just gets you into a really dark place that I could just never come out of. There were things in my lifetime that I just kept seeing, and it just led me down paths of poor decisions that ended up costing me my marriage, caused me good relationships with my daughters, to the point where it caused me issues in my workplace as a result of that. they came to me and said, you got to take some time off. You got to take 2 months. I was fortunate that I had it with pay, but I had to protect my job through FMLA. Ended up going to my therapist, and I was thinking, oh gosh, she's gonna, diagnose me with, I don't know, anxiety, or depression or something like that. It's a weird thing to take a look at your diagnosis in the clearest of terms and seeing PTSD. Served 15 years. I never saw that. I never saw combat. I never saw anybody get killed. I never saw any of that. But yet here I kept asking, what's up with this? And he goes, Brad, it's a compound PTSD or complex PTSD. You've had so much that you've had in your lifetime and then culminated with really not releasing some of the trauma that you've experienced in your life alongside all the issues that you're experiencing with your daughter. I had battled suicidal ideation for a long time, from my teens, early 20s, and then here it is that night on November 30th, and I'm just by myself, had lost almost all my friends. And the only thing I thought was, I've got nothing. Is it during the pandemic? I'm just like, well, I'm totally isolated. So what I ended up doing? I pulled up my firearm. I ended up unloading it, made sure it was unchambered, and just lifted it up, put it beside my head, and pulled the trigger as I closed my eyes. Because I wanted to go ahead and see whether or not that I could do it. When that ended up going, I heard after the trigger pull and it went, automatically it was just like electricity that had flown through my body as I go on, and I heard almost like an audible sound from my daughter, Dad, no. And at that particular time, I ended up putting on my gun lock, locked it away, put it in the safe, and ended up making arrangements to fly out to be with my mom and my brother out in California.
Yeah.
And that really started a lot of the healing process, because I didn't feel like I had any hope. And at that particular time, I felt that if I didn't do that at that particular time and really do some prevention for me personally, I didn't have an advocate at that particular time, other than I didn't want to share anything with my therapist for a number of reasons. But I knew that I had to be somewhere where I had a safe environment to be within, and that I could just be present and deal or not deal with things. But I knew I had to be around people.
So Brad, there's somebody listening to our episode today, and they're in a very dark place. They're feeling hopeless. They're feeling alone, isolated. They're battling some pretty heavy things. How do we reach out to them right now? What do we say to them?
There's a couple of things that I would say. One, hope is just around the corner. It really is. This is not one of those things that's just a placating type of statement. There are people that love you and care for you, even though you may not think of it at that particular moment, because all you're thinking about is how you're feeling, or the lack of feeling is, words like it would be better if. No, there's no would be better if. It's just reach out to somebody. In the States, there is 988, which is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. There are so many different things that are out there. There are reaching out to your friends, reaching out to that one individual that I call it, Brene Brown calls it, reach out to your marble jar friends, those that that hold your confidences. They've been there with you and they'll be there for you. Don't think about, well, they're busy, they're this or they're that. Screw that. My brother, I think I told you before we started, I called my brother so many different times during the time after, when I was separated and going through divorce. Hadn't been for him, I'm not sure what I would end up doing. But actually reaching out to somebody. And sometimes it's just saying, hey, listen, I don't need you to solve my problem. I just need you to sit with me. Empathy, compassion, and is going to be the things that are going to help get you through with the other person. Giving yourself grace and just saying, hey, listen, I've screwed up. I've made mistakes. But know that you are deep down You are a good person. There is nothing that cannot be that there's nothing that you've done that can't be fixed. If it's legal, you're going to have to end up owning it. If there are things that are wrong, you're going to have to own it. If there are things that, you've done, said, or whatever, you're going to have to own it and make amends for it as much as you possibly can. I've done that. Whether or not that somebody forgives you or not, that's not the reason why why you're asking for forgiveness. It's for the other individual. Those are the things that are crucial. Um, but understand that deep down that you are worthy of love, connection, and belonging are absolutely critical. So many times we don't think we're worthy, when in fact that you are.
Yeah.
You hear statements like "you're enough," and people go, "What does that mean?" It means that irrespective of anything outside, you're enough. Outside validation has no bearing on your self-worth or your value of the love that you possess for yourself. It's everything that's possessed within inside you. Anything from the external, that's things that we see. Those things are just, they're vapor. When we end up taking a look at when we are deep within inside ourselves and just say, listen, I'm worthy to be around. I'm worthy of love and connection and belonging. And it's just looking in the mirror and knowing that your story is not complete, that you have more to be able to provide.
I can imagine the sense of relief on your end of the phone when your brother answers in those moments when it's inconvenient for him or for you. And just the overwhelming sense of you're hearing it ring, it's ringing, and you're like, oh, please pick up, right? And just that sense of, hey, and there he is. I'm thinking for the families of those who may not understand the full breadth of a loved one who's battling right now. What do we say to a family member who could be on the other end of that line in that moment? What do we say to them? How do we, from your perspective, how do we encourage families and friends to be open and willing to help in that moment?
Well, it's interesting. I think back now, what are the things that I would do differently with my daughter? Or how would I show up for somebody else that would be calling? It's just listening and just and just helping them understand. It's like, going, what you're feeling is valid. It's just, don't invalidate what they're saying with you. Don't, things that I have heard, well, that's selfish. That's the most selfish thing that individual ever did. I actually had someone that when I posted on LinkedIn at one particular time, they said good riddance, and it was just like one of the most hurtful things ever. But for the individuals that are receiving that, one of the best things that I can tell them is, what do you need from me right in this moment? How can I show up for you? What words? Tell me where you're at right now. Tell me what's going through your mind, and just be there. It's like, going, and just be willing to say, hey, listen, let me come over and let's get a cup of coffee. Or if you're close enough to do that, and just show up. And if they say, no, that's okay. No, go ahead and get in the car and drive over. If they're close enough, and just sit with them. That's all you need to do. Sometimes it's just hugging them and, tell them that you love them, that you care for them, that they're important to you, that they matter, and that they matter to other people. Sometimes what ends up happening often is we see ourselves in such a vacuum that it's difficult. The family members or friends, oftentimes they go, well, they miss that call. It's like, oh gosh, it's not convenient.
Yeah.
Well, my feeling is, so what? Well, it's a life of convenience. When we look at the life of convenience, what does that do for us? It's a life of inconvenience and being willing and ready and able in order to be there for somebody else that you love and care for. If you're not willing to do that, who are you really? Who are you at your core? I mean, it's just taking a look in the mirror and taking stock of yourself. I've had that happen so many different times. What would I do differently? I've had so many of my friends. I have a good friend of mine lost his son. Thought he was doing well in school. had just gotten engaged and ended up taking his life. And they're still having difficulty in coming to terms with that. So from the families and the friends, just take the call, especially if you know that they have been struggling, or you know them, or if they haven't been reaching out. There are things that are said, but yet there are things that are unsaid. If you ask them, how are you doing? And they use the word, I'm fine, I'm doing okay, that's BS. Because, the question I always ask, well, tell me how you are really, because it's not often what is said, it's the things that are unsaid that really coming into play, and being willing and ready and able to get dirty. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. It's not something necessarily that is pleasant for people to deal with on a regular basis, or at any basis for that matter. But if they're not willing to love and be open, then they're going to end up really reaping what they have sown. And they could end up being in that same position. It's taking stock of, what would I want? How would I want to be reached out to? I think about that frequently. It's like, how do I end up doing that? So those are the things that I would recommend to the families. Just be willing and open and available. And I've heard, I just don't have the ability. It's not our ability that we're called to. It's our availability. Just be available. I think often that's just what people really are looking for. Are you available to them?
And I think, Brad, having you on, you give a very unique perspective in that you have suffered loss, and I can't imagine that feeling as a parent. But as well, we almost lost you. So you see both sides of this equation.
Yeah.
Where in some situations we're only hearing kind of one side of it. You've seen both.
Right.
So your perspective in helping people understand and take a moment to listen and hear what you're saying, I think there's a wealth of wisdom coming from you right now. So just want to thank you for being open to share that, because I love for people to be able to speak like this and find some way of making this something that's not so scary to talk about, right?
Yeah, it really becomes destigmatizing the whole perspective of mental health, and really what that looks like in life. And it's just people think they become scared of it. And suicide prevention is like, well, what are the things that I can end up doing for myself, for my family, for those that I love, my friends, all those that we end up caring about? People don't know. They don't know how to. They become, I'm not equipped. It doesn't take a lot.
Yeah. So my question for you, Brad, in this moment, how are you right now? Like, where are you at right now in your journey?
I'm amazing. It's, and I don't say that flippantly. When I went through my deep work with Mike Paterano and Annie Lieb through the breath framework, it was really getting down into, I'm talking about in the mud and the dirty stuff where you're just like, okay, who am I at my beginning? Where am I at? Who and what have I given my power to? And then really looking at, where am I at? What are my core values? What are the things that I place the highest value on for me? And then going through the muck and the mire of just, of all the hurts and all the trauma that I went through, and putting down those things that didn't serve me. And then really going through the whole process and really trusting it, so I can get to that other side of the healing component of it. And being able to write about it. I think those are the things that really help me get to the place of wholeness. And I think that that's where I'm at right now. One of the things that you make decisions on is during that time is, where are you at? What things are numbing effects? So at that particular time, when I was beginning, and so kind of the middle part, I gave up alcohol. It's not that I had issues with it, but it was one of those things where it was numbing. And I was dating at that particular time. And I said, no, can't do that either. I just didn't feel in alignment with my core values. There were just things that were just not right. Believe it or not, I actually met my current girlfriend during that same time frame when I just met her. And matter of fact, we're celebrating our 2-year anniversary of meeting
Nice.
Tomorrow,
Nice.
which is really which is a funny thing. So, as we're going through that, but even during that time when I first met her, I told her the next day, I was like, I'm just not ready. I'm not ready yet. She's an amazing lady. She's absolutely just stunning. One of the kindest hearts you'd ever want to meet. Has a wonderful family that is now part of that extension of my own family. But going through that and getting into good headspace, it's a very strange and calming environment that I possess now. Looking through meditation, better prayer life, more family type of oriented things, definitely leading a calmer lifestyle, which is really unusual because my dad, I love him, but he had a volatile temper. And unfortunately, I inherited a lot of that. Today is just so different. I don't get angry. I mean, I get frustrated. I don't get angry. I don't yell. But when I have things that I'm upset with, I confront them. I identify what they are. I talk about them and get resolution and just move on. I find that as a result of that, it freed me up to really write. Wrote, and I think that's one of the things that as I was going through my whole transformation, that's what I found has been the most helpful for me. So I'm in a place of pretty much, I feel I'm in a better transformative state of mind and able to deal with just about anything. I don't think that I have an awful lot of those issues. It got tried beginning on October when my girlfriend was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. So, and within less than 2 weeks of the diagnosis, she was in radiation treatment and chemotherapy. Matter of fact, she just finished her last chemo treatment a couple of weeks ago. And I just celebrate every single day.
Nice.
And I think that's one of the things that's just really a key is how do I show up for myself? What are the things that I celebrate? And I just look at those things. I make a choice every single day on how I want to be. I want to be happy. I'm not happy as a result of an external. It's all internal. There are things that are additive. And I think that that's the difference is you don't have to be driven by an external locus in order to get to a place of happiness, enlightenment, peace. It all comes within. And if you don't make those decisions and how to deal with those on a day-to-day basis, it becomes challenging. Even in a work environment where I'm at right now, it's the same thing that I end up doing. I'm working remote on my 9-to-5 job, and then also working with my clients in my transformation coaching practice, and then probably is going to be doing the same thing with my corporate clients as well, and in working with them. And that's also something that I'm making is a pivot on within my company, and that's a little scary. So I think from that standpoint, the ability to feel okay about even when things are scary, you're still okay. So I think from that standpoint, I'm probably in the strongest mental position that I've ever been.
Good. Brad, we're trying to bake into our conversation a message from the authors back to Shar so that as she listens to this, and she's going to now have to reach for some Kleenex or something in preparation of this, but your message to Shar, I'm getting out of the way, and it's just you and Shar talking here. What do you want to say to Shar about being part of the project, about her, your relationship, whatever? This is your time with Shar. What would you like to say?
Yeah. Hi, Shar. I just want to tell you what a magnificent human being that you are. Our conversations that you and I have had over the last number of months have been truly transformative. Not only for you as the coordinator from Mission Hope, but also in my connection on LinkedIn, but as my friend. The time that we're able to share in understanding and gaining perspective into one another's lives is truly inspirational for me. And also, I'm just grateful for your friendship. You don't get those opportunities very frequently to make a heart connection and a friendship connection with other people on different social platforms. It's very unique. And given the perspective that we end up having within Mission Hope, that's going to be leading to another book that's coming out called Mission Faith, and the ability to come together in a different framework enables me to do so much more, and it's a direct result of you, and I'm truly grateful for that. For you as the head of our missions, and the ability for you to do the things that you have done are truly amazing. So I want you to know that you have done so much for so many people, and you're going to touch many lives, indirectly and directly. So on the days when you're not feeling 100% or things are not going quite right, know the fact is that there are people that love and care for you, and that there's going to be so much more that you are going to be doing and touching on other people that you just will have no idea on what that's going to be looking like in the future. But I'm grateful for you, and I appreciate you.
Yeah. And how you're showing up for yourself. As we go back to the original part of our conversation, right? Having that conversation with the mirror, and we talked about that. It's amazing. Brad, how do people connect with you? Let's share the website again as well.
Sure. It is www.fmthYllc.com, from My Heart to Yours LLC. So they look at it that way, or they can go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free. I'm also on Instagram. They can feel free to go ahead and connect me with that. Go to my website. There's all the links for in there. I've done some YouTube videos as well. I'm going to be making some changes off of that. One of the things that I'll be working with in the very near term is another book with Shar that has been Mission Faith. That's going to be another one. I'm also going to be doing and looking at working locally with some different associations here in Michigan, and offering a couple of free workshops to help companies in working through some of the issues that we've talked about today.
Good. And that'll all be through the website, so people can go there and connect with you.
Absolutely.
Brad, so great to have you on. And again, thank you for being so open and transparent with us, sharing your story to help some other people that are listening. And as well, Brad, thank you for your service.
My pleasure.
To your country. I really want to acknowledge that, because there's not everyone that follows that path. Mm-hmm. And I think it needs to be recognized and honored. So thank you for all your
I appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
All right. And Shar, thank you so much for sending Brad into my life. Great to have a conversation with you, Brad. And
my pleasure.
Thank you for being part of this book. Really appreciate having time with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for being here for the podcast Mission Hope, Thriving Through Seasons of the Soul. Came out March 24th, 2023. 18 amazing authors, all corralled by the amazing Shar Murphy. If you need some inspiration in your life, please go to the show notes. Follow the links. Go purchase the book. Gift it to someone. Buy copies and leave it in your waiting rooms of businesses or the dentist office. Just go out and buy the book and support these great authors. Many first-time authors, first-time podcast guests. A lot of firsts happening here. Shar Murphy, thank you. Dominic Damaski, publisher as well from Motivation Champs. Thank you so much for bringing together these amazing people, and to have these authors on a podcast here to talk about their chapters is so great. So encouraging you, go out, check out Mission Hope, Thriving Through Seasons of the Soul. Get your copy today. Thanks for being part of the podcast. Catch you on the next one.